Welcome to John Ferry and Live. I really appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. We are here at the very last Sunday night in November of 2020, and we're here to live large with you guys tonight. And I'm going to just remind everybody what Live Large is all about. So we've got the American flag here with the Live Large symbol on the bottom. Tonight's episode is really going to hit home with the Live Large fans, because when we talk about Live Large, we talk about living life to the fullest. Make the most of every day and making a difference to others, right? It's really about living our best life. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, and how we can tie snowmobiling, the sled world, into our personal lives, and how we can kind of make everything work tonight. It's a very different, unique episode, something we've not tried to tackle before in the past, but I'm really proud to be able to bring you guys the content that we're going to have tonight. So tune in, share this out. You guys are going to be entered in. Live Large, Share, and Win is going to be all about the Fly Racing goggles tonight. So we have the Fly Racing Zone Snow goggles. If you watch the show, share the show, you'll be enter to win the Fly Racing goggles that we have up for following us tonight here. So make sure you follow Fly Racing on Facebook and on Instagram to be eligible to win as well. So tune in there. There's a lot of links, guys, in the show notes. If you go into the show notes either before or after the show here, you're going to have links in there for the merchandise to get in there. And as a reminder, we're just about to wrap up the sweepstakes, the big Climb Ultimate Backcountry Sled sweepstakes. We need to make sure that you guys have that. You're aware of it. We're just went over today over $100,000 in total donations so far for that contest or that sweepstakes. Someone's going to walk away on Friday night with a brand new 2021 Polaris 850 fully built. Someone else is going to walk away with a sled deck, a Marlon sled deck. Someone else is walking away with 2 Level 1 Avalanche classes from Matt Enns and Mountain Skills. And Fly Racing Snow is going to be providing the final prize, and that's a $2,000 shopping spree on their website. So, guys, share this out, get in to win, get into that sweepstakes, a lot of good stuff there. So let me go ahead and drop the music here, and I'm going to introduce you to my guest tonight. I've got some really special friends on the show tonight that I'm really proud to introduce you guys to, and so we're going to bring them on in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I've got my friends here, DJ Osborne from Tracked Out Adventures. Tell everybody hi, DJ.
Hey, guys.
And we have Travis. Travis, you say it first, and then I'm going to say it, and I'm still going to butcher it. Is it Belagier? Did I see? Is
Belanger.
It Belagier? Okay. Is it French Canadian, right? Isn't that basically what it is? But
right.
Travis, say hi to everybody quick and let us know a little bit about yourself and Men on Fire, what Men on Fire is all about.
Yeah. Hey, guys. My name is Travis Belanger. I'm a founder of Men on Fire Coaching and Speaking, and I help men ignite the passion in their lives, help them reclaim their purpose and passion, and through men's groups, coaching and speaking, and basically help men to change the language that they use themselves with other people. Because I find that nowadays men aren't so able to have good conversations with themselves and with other people in a healthy way. So that's largely in part what coaching business focuses on. So
yeah, that's awesome. And you guys, Travis has been a big fan of the John Ferry Live show. You know, he's following us and he's living large himself up in. You're in is it Alberta, Alberta, Canada? Is that where you're at?
Yeah,
Travis?
Alberta, Canada,
Yep. So up in Alberta, Canada, he's up there, and we've been friends now, and I know I've been following you. It's got to be a year or two that we've been connected, or longer, maybe even.
Yeah.
And what I would tell you is, for anybody who's watching tonight, I consider Travis a gem in the rough, or like he's the diamond in the rough here, guys. Is the work he does and the content he shares, I feel like is so underexposed and so powerful if we all take it seriously and look at it, that I just was inspired to invite Travis on the show. And it took us a long time. We've been talking about doing a show for a long time, Travis. And at first we were talking about doing it on your platform, because I know you have your platform over there and then over here as well too. And I thought, like, man, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and make this happen. I feel like the time is right as we're wrapping up, 2020, and I intentionally went out of my way to like wear my brightest and loudest Live Large gear. I've got my red shirt on, my hat on, because I truly believe that tonight's show and episode is all about, getting people to live their best life, right? And living large and what that's all about. And so we'll come back to you in a minute, Travis, but I want everybody to get to know DJ a little bit here, as well. And DJ also very long, both of these, like, guys, out of the entire panel, 151 episodes that I've ever had, these two gentlemen are probably two of the gentlemen that I've probably got the most respect for out of almost all my guests before. I've got a lot of respect for all my guests, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to tonight's topic and what these two dudes are doing in their lives and what they stand for, like, these guys are true friends, and I'm so proud to have them on. So, DJ, you and I have known each other now for, it's been what, 3 years-ish, maybe?
Been a while.
Yeah. And again, followed you. I think I first ran into you. You were probably, I think, interviewed on Scott Sparrow's show, the Driven network on that show. Oh. And that's probably where I first got introduced to you and Tracked Out Adventures and what that was all about. And then I think it was 2 summers ago, I got to come down and actually experience what Tracked Out Adventures is all about. And we got to go on an ATV tour in Utah. We got to have family dinner together, with your wife and your kids. And I just, so amazing. What an amazing family you guys have from start to finish. And, but why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Tracked Out Adventures and kind of what your day job is. And then we'll kind of tie in more of your story as we get into Travis's story here. So, but tell us about Tracked Out Adventures and kind of what you do out in Utah.
Yeah. So Tracked Out Adventures guide company. We do a lot of backcountry snowmobiling, motorcycle tours, and UTV tours just outside of Park City, Utah, and now in southern Utah. I myself am a guy that took advantage of someone like Travis here, as I hired someone to coach me when I'd kind of burnt my life to the ground 5 years ago. So, I love what Travis does, and I'm all about pushing that and pushing my friends.
Yeah.
So,
well, and tonight is, this whole episode, I think if we had a theme, that I would tag this show with is just pure and utter, like, transparency, open dialogue, trust, all of the above, right? And, we're going to get into some pretty intense, deep discussions tonight as we go through this. And the way I want to tee this up for everybody is I really feel like, all of us in our lives, men and women alike, all have this imaginary life that we all can imagine. It's our dream life, right, that we have, right? And I think in that dream life, we think about, for me anyway, I'll just kind of list mine out, but like I think of spirituality, I think of, my wife and my amazing wife, I think of my amazing kids and extended family, an amazing job. I think of being able to go out and do the things that I love doing, like snowmobiling, things like this. Frankly, this is a hobby for me, right? It's like, the passion I have behind all of this and the fact that all of you get to see my face every single week, like it or hate it, the bottom line is, like, this is only a part of my life. This is a very small part of my life. And I think a lot of people look at things like what DJ does and what Travis does and what I do, and just kind of, on the surface on social media, there's this idea that, like, man, that person or that person, they've got it good. They got their crap together, But the reality is like we all have to work at it, right? I mean, we all are laughing because we know what it's like, right? It's like the reality is, like, every one of us in our life has something in our lives that has some background, some story, right? I think of, like, all the people that I've interviewed over the years on avalanche safety and education, snowmobile safety, right? Like, my attitude about every person out there, like, who's even watching right now, they all have a story that can contribute to, backcountry safety and education, right? Tonight, I would challenge everybody in the thing too, is like everybody who's watching this show right now, and even the names I list are people who I know commonly very well. I know faces and names, and there's some private stories I know, and there's, public stories I know, and I can verify in my head as I think through these lists of, like, almost everybody does have a situation or story they've gone through in their lives to get to where they're at, right? And, for me, and I told you guys this ahead of time a little bit too, and, like, I promise this is going to be hopefully the extent of, my deep discussion from me, and then I really want to turn it over to Travis and DJ. But, when I think of, my life and what I've done to try and kind of set myself up for success, it really is about prioritizing things in life and really making sure that things are in the right order, right? Like, and I've had this question over the years a lot, like, man, how do you get to snowmobile so much? You must really prioritize and make a big deal of snowmobiling. And I'm like, the reality is it's actually last on my list, like, of my top 5 items that I would focus on in my life. Like, for me personally, it's, spirituality, right? And it's like, for me, that's my Catholic faith, believing in God. For others, it's different, right? I'm not going to sit and tell everybody that religion is for everybody and what it's there too. I mean, some people it's meditation, sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's their time up on the mountain away from the world, but whatever it is that drives your spirituality and gives you that vision and that picture that you're looking for, right? And then your family, right? It's that, for me, it's like prioritizing my wife over my job and over my kids and over snowmobiling and all these other things. And then my kids come next, right? Like, and very intentionally, right? And, like, I would challenge everybody that if somebody out there is putting their children before their spouse or their significant other, I'm going to challenge you and tell you probably got it backwards, because if you're making decisions for your children first before your spouse, you're probably setting yourself up for a disaster, is my opinion on that. And I think a lot of people would back me up on that. And then you get into work. If I put work above everything else, work's important. I probably spend the most time at work, let's be honest. But bottom line is I'm making decisions based on what I'm doing at work, based on what my family needs and what the priorities are there. And then way down here at the bottom is snowmobiling. And if we got free time at the end, we got time to go do it. And a weekend ago, I killed snowmobiling plans because I had too much work to do. And that was my higher priority than sledding, right? And so that's kind of my soapbox, my platform, kind of to kick this thing off, right? And, you know, I want to turn it over to Travis a little bit and just talk a little bit about, you know, let's start with, like, what is Men on Fire, right? Like, I've heard this term, and I know, Travis, that term Men on Fire is not unique to you. Is that correct? It's kind of part of a bigger, you know, initiative that's going on around the world?
Well, actually, Men on Fire is I am the original.
You are, okay.
That came up with the name, and then there's a guy in California that does Man on Fire.
Maybe
he has
that's
a whole different
okay.
kind of platform. It's very different. It's he's obviously been around a lot longer than I have, and
Okay.
I didn't even know that he had that until I came up with the name. We started searching for trademark
Oh,
stuff.
funny.
My
Okay.
business coach was like, "We might have an issue." I found this on the internet, and I'm like, "Oh crap!" We know how that goes, right? You
Yeah.
just never know what's going to happen, right? So,
Yeah.
but what it was is, growing up, I've always been this guy with like an insane amount of energy. Like I ran, I wrestled, I was a track athlete, and just endless amounts of energy. I would just go day and night, and I've never slowed down. I've never been a heavy set guy. I've always just been really active. I worked out for like 14 years and didn't get into bodybuilding. I just like to be active all the time, and I always have lots of energy. And people are like, "Don't you ever sleep?" And I'm like,
You're like a man on fire, right?
just go, man on fire, right? And then when I started my coaching business, I'm like, well, I'm kind of always on fire. I'm always going. And people have asked me, how do you have so much energy? And I had a guy, let's go for a drive. Show me where you've lived. There must be an explanation for why you're like this. And I'm like, it's in here. It's in here and it's in here. And that's just who I am. And whether I was like building my life up or tearing my life down, I always had lots of energy all the time. Go. And, you know,
sounds familiar.
Right?
So, I think all of us three on the panel here, I could put us all in that same category. So
yeah. And I did everything. I mean, growing up, I did door-to-door sales. I worked in the food service industry. Typical for Alberta, I worked in the oil patch. I did the rigs for 6 years. Loved it. Was like, go. And then I got into the trades, and I've been self-employed for 20 years. And when I remember the first few years when I got divorced, I worked literally day and night. I'd sleep 4 hours a night. And I did that for like 2-3 years till I got back on my feet again. And I just didn't run out of energy. And I still love what I do in my trade. But now I've taken a different kind of focusing more on the fulfillment part, more on the principles and the values. And what I saw growing up, especially in the oil patch, was guys just burning their lives down all the time. I'm like, guys on third divorce in 5 years. I'm like, what are you doing? And I remember I worked for a large company, a large drilling company, and they would send me from rig to rig to fill in for guys for a week so the guy could go home and get divorced after 17 years of marriage and 3 kids. And I'm like, dude, why don't you just stop right now and take the rest of the year off, or take 2 years off?
Yeah.
Because your whole life is going to burn to the ground. Like, it's already bad enough as it is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just, and that's how I kind of got into it built up. And then I started doing personal development, and it kind of all came together.
Well, let's talk. I'm going to pause you for a second there, because I think, you know, there's a key detail here that I want to make sure everybody understands, is that, you know, Travis, your quote unquote day job is you're a welder, you're a fabricator, right? Like you're welding, you're fixing, and you're working mostly in and around the oil industry of Alberta. Is that a fair statement, right?
So I actually, when I left the rigs, I stayed out of it, and then I lived next to a big city, so with heavy equipment, structural steel.
Okay.
We work on a lot of specialized equipment. I'm a portable welder, so I have 2 welding trucks, and I have a guy that works for me.
Yeah.
So,
you know, and here's what I would tell you is that, you know, the work and like I grew up as the son in a family of 6 kids, you know, mom and dad. My dad was the main breadwinner, and he was a welder. So like this kind of hits home for me a little bit, right? It's like he worked for the state of Minnesota, the DOT, and he would work on heavy equipment and dump trucks and, you know, snowplow blades and, you know, road graders, police cars, all that stuff. And so like I think of him and I'm thinking of you, and like I remember as a kid growing up in that environment of like, that's about as quote unquote, this is being a little cliche here intentionally, but it's about as manly man job as you can get. Like, you're making stuff with your hands, you're welding stuff together, you're dirty, grimy, you're in coveralls all day long, you got leather gloves on, you got a mask on half the time. Like, when you picture like the hardest core blue collar jobs in the world, like, I picture somebody like a welder, right? And so what I'm saying here is that you're surrounded daily with a crap ton of testosterone, right? Like, you think
All
of
the time.
the people you're working around, like, and it's kind of like, let's just be honest and be real here, guys. It's like, you get into that environment and it's like a little bit of a pissing match, right? It's like everybody's trying to like be the little bit smarter, smart ass, or a little bit bigger, stronger, this, and and it's always some kind of a competition in life, right? We're always in this like this unspoken competition in life, and kind of being this kind of manly man thing, right? And the reality is like, that environment doesn't support and isn't conducive to people just being genuine and real with each other, right? Because it's this kind of like, oh yeah, look at him, like I weld better than he does, or like, oh, I can haul more on my truck than he does, or whatever it is. But you're not really having, quote unquote, these, what we're going to get into a little bit, is these touchy-feely conversations a little bit that sometimes are absolutely necessary in our lives to just kind of get real and get down and dirty and what is maybe making our lives better, or in many cases, completely burning our lives to the ground and destroying them, right? And so, Travis, keep going a little bit. I don't know how much more you had to cover there too, but I just feel like that was an important moment to pause and kind of set the stage for, like, you're surrounded by probably manly men day in and day out with what you do. And so you're exposed and you get to see a lot of things. And so, feel free to speak kind of in high level terminology at this point. I mean, we want to, quote unquote, protect the identity of individual people that, maybe aren't here on the show with us tonight, but, reference some of the situations you've come across in your time that you've witnessed that's driven you to start this men's coaching, program.
So over the years, I just kind of saw what was going on with these guys. Their inability to have solid relationships with their families, being gone all the time, always having the most toys, the biggest truck. And welders are notorious for that. They got to buy the biggest truck and then dump 50, 60, 100 grand into it in toys and upgrades. Like, one guy even had it's called a welding wheel, and he had dollar signs around the outside. I'm like, and then it was custom painted. I'm like, dude, it's a work truck. Like, it just has to get you from point A to point B. But these guys jack their trucks up. Yeah. And I'm like, you still got to be able to get into the thing, right? Like, and I get it. Some of it's functional, but a lot of it's just for show. And I've had guys literally tell me, like, one guy bought a truck off of me, and he's like, well, why do you want my truck? I like how I look in it. People look at me because it was all jacked up.
Yeah.
And then next month, I'm picking it up at a pawn shop because he sold it for cocaine. And I'm like, and that's like a theme in our province. Like, this is that's a theme in this industry. It's what happens. It's so normal for guys to do that. And it's just like, man, I was just like, what is going on in this industry, right? And then I see it, and Alberta is just ripe with it. We see it in the trades, in all the trades. It doesn't matter if you're a plumber, a framer, anybody who's got basically making a lot of money. Generally, they eventually burn themselves to the ground, or they become a playboy, and they got to be the man, right? You got to be the man. They got something to prove to everybody, and it just doesn't show. And I've seen it lots even in sledding, and there's a lot of guys that I just won't ride with anymore because you get out there and it's all testosterone, and I'm like, okay, I'm not riding with you. You got a cooler full of beer. I'm not riding with you. Yeah. You want to try and climb that hill, you can go by yourself. I'm not interested. And we've done it several times where I've gone riding with one of my best friends, and we get to one side of the valley, and there's guys climbing the hill on one side. And we try and say something, and they're all like, take off, dude. So we go to the other side of the valley, and the same thing's happening on the other side of the valley. And I'm like, doesn't anybody value their life? Does anybody have any character? Does anybody not, want more out of life? And I just was like, there's got to be more to this. And I asked one of my buddies, I said, what am I missing here? What am I missing in this whole show here? Like, I don't understand. And one of my best friends says, like, I was having trouble in relationships. And he's like, dude, you're the common denominator. And I was like, shit, he's right. And so I'm like, all right, right. So then I just decided, hey, I'm going to work on myself, and I started reading books, and then I got into a personal development program, and that really shifted things. And then I met my fiance, and she coaches women, and we just kind of put the two and two together. And I'm like, okay, we both have a story to tell. And the thing is, until you get a guy that's masculine to start telling a story and talking about feelings and emotions, and what I didn't realize for 20 years in the welding business, I would come onto the site, talk to the superintendent. I'd talk for 5 minutes about work, And then I was interested. Then I would start talking about family, skidooing, camping, holidays, where they've been, and that right there made the connection. And then I would come to the job site, and then I'd come to job site some days, and guys would go, "Hey man, guess what my kid did today?" And the guy was dying to tell me what his kid did, and I was like, "Well, that's awesome." Like the guy he wants to make some connection, right? Because what do guys talk about at work? They don't talk about those things, right?
Not usually, yeah.
Not usually, right? And the guy that I had to go get my truck from the pawn shop from, I had to come in his house and talk to him, and he was all whacked out. And I'm like, dude, you need to slow down. You need to stop and fix your life. And I ended up talking to his wife and helping them sell their house. And because nobody was willing to even go near this guy because they just judged him and said, I'm not going near this guy. But all he needed was some help, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to help them so they could sell their house and they could kind of get going their separate ways. And it was a good learning experience. But I've seen these over and over and over again where masculinity stops guys from making the right decision, and they put this mask on and they're like, I'm not going there, because they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to show their emotion.
Well, to some degree, that's the way they were raised, right? I think, think of like what it meant to be a man in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and who all of our parents were that we were raised by, right? Most of us, if you look at us, our parents were, from the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe 80s, but, that's that era. Yeah, it was this idea of like, oh yeah, you gotta be a manly man, right? And that's, thing there too. And so I'm going to maybe shift over to DJ a little bit here and kind of give a little more background for DJ is, DJ, your background, I want everybody to share with everybody like your time that you spent with Nitro Circus, and to kind of set the groundwork also for kind of think of masculinity and all this testosterone that was going on in the industry and what you kind of grew up in, right? And kind of what you were there too. So tell a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, so I grew up essentially in the Nitro Circus. I was there when it started and kind of when it got really big. And that was my life. My life was riding motorcycles, making cool videos, and just living on top of the world. I mean, every person's dream, right?
Yeah.
Dream.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And then I, got married, started having kids, and life slowed down. I needed to invest more time into that, and eventually the Nitro Circus would be sold, and I'd have to go get a real job. And I was a software engineer for a little bit, and I was making really good money, and I thought that was the path, right? Like work hard, make lots of money, and life will be good. And I was in the midst of it all, though. I'd been lying like my whole life, and I was unworthy of the wife I had, have still, but I was completely unworthy, and eventually I just burned it to the ground. I wanted to die. I used to sit in the closet every night, and I'm like, tonight's the night I'm going to end it. And it was dark. It was really dark. But there was a guy who I followed on Facebook, and I listened to what he said, and it resonated with me, and it gave me hope because he had burnt everything to the ground, and I needed his help because I could not for the life of me tell the truth, and I couldn't carry on. So that's how it all kind of started for me. There was no other option. It was either die or try and figure out how to live. And I took the step. I took the plunge. I hired this guy, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
But I had to radically change my life, and I've done that for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And I had to have those conversations because I didn't know how to accept love. I didn't know how to love just because that just wasn't how I was brought up. I was kind of over here in the corner, and my dad wasn't present. My mom was working just a ton. So, she could support us. So
you bottom line kind of raised yourself, it sounds like. And you got to that point in your life where, late teens, probably early 20s would be my guess, but feel free to correct me. And then at some point you got introduced into this like crazy world of the Nitro Circus and the motorcycle and, road shows. And, I would imagine just being part of the Nitro Circus, you're in the limelight and become the celebrity status. And, I can only imagine that like maybe your head gets a little inflated and,
my God.
oh my God, I'm part of the Nitro Circus. Look at me. I'm hot stuff, right? Like, I'm sure that played into it, and it kind of it probably was planting those seeds that were already there and watering those seeds of kind of bringing your life the wrong direction. And then you met this amazing woman along the way, started an amazing family.
Yeah.
And that, in your own mind, in your own way, like, you've already said, it's like you felt like you weren't worthy of that. And so you're always seeking something different and something better and, whatever.
Yeah.
But, I don't know how deep you want to go tonight, but yeah.
Well, I would tell myself the lie that it was her. That was my lie. It was her. She was causing all these problems in my life. And that's what a lot of people do. Like, I have a friend right now going through some stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is your problem. No matter what you want to think or say or what she did or didn't do, I'm like, at the end of the day, it's your problem. And you've got to figure it out. And I was never about accountability and taking that step. It took me a little while to be like, dude, this is you. All of this is you.
Let's talk about that word for a minute. Like, I'm going to have you go first, DJ, and then I'm going to quickly go over to Travis. I want to understand today, what's your definition of accountability? What does that mean to you?
Today, that means showing up. It means staying in the fight. And when I say staying in the fight, that means committing to your relationships. That means committing to your work. It means being passionate and, having purpose in everything you do.
Yeah.
It is. So many people hide, and you can't. There's no hiding.
It's easy to it's their fault, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you're at work, if you're in a relationship, if you're up on the mountain and you're getting stuck, it's like the sled's fault or whatever. Tie this all back into whatever we do. It's like, not having accountability and just owning it and then fixing it with what's in your control. That's a big part of it, right? But Travis. Yeah, Travis, how about you? Like, what does accountability mean to you today, like in this world that you're living in right now?
Yeah, so pretty close to what DJ said. There's showing up is a big part of it. Backing up what you say, like if you're gonna act a certain way, if you're gonna speak a certain way, that should match your actions.
Yeah,
and it should match the things that you do. And I have these 3 pillars in my coaching business: success, purpose, and legacy. And all those 3 things combined together can get you because if you don't have purpose, you're not going to have success, right? So and your success, that purpose and success will create a legacy for you. And really, what do you want at the end of the day? What are we all living for? What are we all trying to do, right? So being accountable will get you success. And then you have to write down. You really have to write down what's accountability to you. Like, how many guys have sat down and written about that stuff or read a book about it? Like, it's one of those things that. Yeah, like most guys I know, like, I don't read, brother. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean you don't read?
Yeah.
Like, high school. That was the last time I read.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You read every day.
Yeah. And that's something that I know evolved for you a lot, DJ, and I think Travis, you as well too, is this idea of like, mentorship, learning, education too. So maybe Travis, I'll start with you first. Is, what was that moment in your life, and kind of who were your mentors in life that you that started getting you through this hurdle? And then, who did you start looking to for inspiration and information to kind of pull yourself through? Because, historically you were, and it just through pieces of conversations, Travis, you shared with me that, I feel like you're ready to talk about openly, but if not, we can divert. But, like, you were in a marriage that didn't work out, right? Prior to your current relationship. And so there was a moment in time that you went through that. And then ultimately you've started to figure this stuff out and to kind of get to the point where you felt like you could then turn around and help other men because of what you learned. But, who in your life were your mentors, and what kind of information were you, taking in to be able to get through that? So
one of the thing was when I moved out, like the last day of high school, went out on my own. I'm like, I'm out. I got to go do this on my own. It was better for me and my family. And I moved to the big city. And for me, I'm a small town boy, 50 people in our town. So for me to move to a city of a million people was a huge step for me.
Yeah.
And first job I had in the city, I ran into a guy who was into network marketing, and he gave me the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And at 19 years old, that book blew my mind. I was just like, oh, wow, that's a pretty serious book, right? And I was involved with this networking company, and I'm not afraid to say it was Amway. And it's a pretty much a that's a household name for a lot of people, right? And it's a very Christian organization. And so I rolled around that for about 12 years, and then thought I was doing all the right things, and I was trying to do all the right things. And then, there was some stuff in my marriage that wasn't working out at all. And I had mentors, but some of my mentors weren't the mentors I thought. And I was reading books, and I think the reading the books part was really good. And I had a faith, but I didn't believe in myself, and I didn't have confidence in myself. And then my marriage failed, largely in part. I made the decision to leave because I had guilt, I had shame, I'd stepped out of my marriage, and I'm just like, this is crappy. I feel, and I was in the same place DJ was. I was like ready to end my life. I'm like, I had so much shame and so much guilt, and I had no way to deal with it because the men that were in my life, even in my church that I was in, I felt like I was all by myself, and nobody came to ask me, how are you doing? No, really, dude, how are you doing? We don't ask that question enough, and that's why guys will take their own life, because nobody asks that question.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the sole reason, but that is a large part of it. And then I got, years later, was reading more business books, and then one of the girls I dated, her dad was really successful in business, and he kind of gave me some guidance as well. But it was more a taste of his lifestyle, like the way he lived his life with so much purpose and so much gratitude. He had a house in Maui, and people would come to his house, and he would just invite them over to come visit. And I was like, who does that? Who just gets people to come and stay at his house while he's not there? Like, Maui's amazing, right?
That's awesome.
So I experienced that like 5 times, and I'm like, this man is something else. And I learned a lot from him. And then a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, a guy that I was in another networking business with, he's like, are you reading these books? And there's a lot of coaching that goes on in those businesses. And I started reading other books, not just how to win friends and influence people, but relationship books like 5 Love Languages and Think and Grow Rich, and then the 4 Agreements, like different books like that, because if you don't have your personal stuff straightened out, it's gonna be really hard to succeed in business.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was just different people came into my life. And the one big one was a guy who's a good friend of mine. He says, go see these people. There's a group called Integrity Seminars. It's kind of like Landmark or Personal Best. It's one of those kind of organizations that is a really deep dive, like 2-year course, and really establishes your values, your goals, and you actually sit down and write about these things. And that was what set it all off for me. I was just like, man, this is crazy. And things happened to me at a younger age growing up, where I made decisions at like 14 years old to have a different conversation with my parents, namely with my dad, where I was like, okay, something has to change here. This isn't working for me. This isn't working for you. Something's got to change, and something changed. And I didn't realize back then what that was. And now at 48 years old, I'm realizing, oh man, that was one of the smartest decisions I ever made.
Yeah.
Maybe other guys could learn from this.
Nope, absolutely, absolutely. And I know, not too long ago myself too, like I have a friend who, was struggling with some things too. Like, as you guys are talking, like I find that, I mean, and I've shared this on previous episodes too, so it's not necessarily, any kind of a secret, but, my sister, when I was 10 years old, my sister who was 15 years old took her own life, right? And, there was a whole different situation there. It had to do with sexual abuse within an uncle in the family, that kind of thing. And, it just, that whole thing of that idea that asking somebody how they're doing, right? And that kind of that mindset, like honestly, a lot of that is where this whole live large thought process comes from, is this idea of, living life to the fullest, make the most of every day. And when you make the most of every day, just understand that there's a lot of really crappy days, but how do you make the most of it? Or like, do you just, burn it to the ground and walk away? No, like you recover and you salvage whatever you can. But then that last bullet of, make a difference to others is really important to me. And hence the reason that I want to have this conversation is, I guess if nothing else, my goal of this whole conversation is for people to understand that they're not alone, right? And if you don't have somebody in your life who is asking you, how are you doing? Turn it around for a minute and ask somebody else, how are they doing, right? And sometimes taking a little bit of time and effort to focus on someone else and see what's going on in their life, you'll understand that, like, you're not alone. And at some point in the conversation, pretty early on, you're going to have the opportunity to kind of answer that same question back of like, how am I doing, right? Like, exactly. the answer might be like, not that great, like, and there was a moment that I've not shared publicly before today either, but I shared it with you guys right before the show started. But sometimes we all, different parts of our lives that can come to fruition, right? It might be with our marriage or our families, it could be our job or whatever. But this idea of self-doubt and wondering if we're worthy, and it's something that I'll share here, is that I went through this with my new job recently, right? Like I'm 7 weeks into my new job. About a month into it roughly, like I had a chance to meet with a career counselor internally, right? And it just created this weird environment in a professional environment where I felt compelled to openly share how I was doing and feeling. Like everybody else, it's like, oh yeah, it's going great, it's perfect, right? But there was this moment where I'm like, actually, like I'm having some self-doubt. Like everybody around me just feels perfect. Like I go into these presentations and everybody's got their crap together. Everybody just speaks with eloquence, But the thing is I got to remind myself is they've all been there a long time, right? And they've got this experience and practice, and they've probably got their own fair share of, secrets in their closet as well too. But it just got me into this mindset of like, man, I just got brought into this amazing company, and like, am I worthy? Am I worthy to be here, right? And that career counselor just sat with me for a minute and just, let that moment of quiet, which it's one of those things that I think we also don't do enough in conversations, I think either, is just allow silence, right? Like, and that's something that's really important, like in all these really deep dialogues is, sometimes you got to just let stuff sink in for a minute and let there be some awkward silence, just for the sake of there being some awkward silence, to get people to really just not fill the dead air with whatever comes off the top of their mouth, off the tip of their tongue, but really put thought into what they're saying. And when I was with this career counselor, we took that moment of silence, and it was just this like, let that sink in for a minute. And it became emotional for me, but it also then gave me that opportunity to kind of think out loud about, I am worthy. Like she confirmed it for me. A lot of people feel that way. She made me feel like I wasn't alone. And it just helped me get through that moment and that day. And it changed the trajectory for me for the last 3 weeks of my job. It's like I've now got the confidence to understand that, wow, that was a moment, that was a lapse. And it was that self-doubt that I didn't even know existed until I was able to take that moment and just talk about it out loud and be a little vulnerable. And that's probably the next thing we should talk about here is vulnerability. I know that was in our pre-show notes that we talked about, but DJ, what does being vulnerable mean to you, and how have you experienced that in your life, and how has it helped you to get to where you're at today?
If you're friends with me on Facebook, you will see that I share the good and I share the bad. And the reason why I do that is because all of you are living your highlight reel on Facebook, and it's complete BS. Life is full of up and downs every single day. And the better my life gets, the higher the highs are and the lower the lows are. And that's the thing is, for me, you have to share that, because it's total crap if you don't. And so many people live that way. They post up on their Facebook all the great things in their life, but they never once share the bad, And most of those people are living on Misery Street, and they're trying to pull you down offline, but online, it's all good. And so I think people should share the truth a little bit of their life a little bit more, and not just, hey, things are great, because things are not always great. Things suck a lot of the time. So,
well, and if you're nervous about starting, we can talk a little bit about sledding for a minute, right? It's like you talk about, snowmobiling here is like a lot of times all we want to do is post the most epic shot, right? But we don't always post the crash. And so what I've loved doing, and again, I'm guilty of it as anybody, right? Like you always want to post the best picture because it looks the coolest or whatever. But what I always find, and I actually, I do enough social media that I kind of track it as like a really good fail where you fall completely over upside down on yourself. And like people appreciate that more and engage with that post more than a post of you maybe doing this perfect wheelie or whatever it is, right? And so it's a good friendly reminder for all of us that like the more we can just be vulnerable and allow ourselves not to be perfect and to fail a little bit, like the more genuine we're coming across, and the more I think people will embrace and support us and gravitate and become closer to us.
So a lot of people reach out to me, men and women, and talk about the dark things in their life, and I encourage them to go home and talk with their spouse and have that conversation. But that's the problem, is people just live this highlight reel, and they're unwilling to share the bad in their life with anyone. It's sad.
Yeah. How about you, Travis? What does vulnerability mean to you in your life, and kind of how does it play out, and how you experience things today, whether it be for yourself or with the people that you're trying to help?
Well, in one way, I've been vulnerable in the sense of I like to talk, and a lot of times I say shit that just puts me in a spot where I have no choice but to be vulnerable. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, did I just say that? Kind of put your foot in your mouth a few times, right? But then I own it afterwards. Did I say that? Okay, so I'm the kind of guy that if I say something and offend somebody, or then I'll go right to that person and say, look, like there's some conversation here that's not working. Let's just bury the hatchet on this and get this out of the way, right? And the other part is the being vulnerable part. For me to go into coaching from 15 years of welding is unheard of. This doesn't happen in this province. It's not something guys do. Welders don't start talking about their feelings under any circumstance. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, they get emotional. Here's where guys get emotional in Alberta. When their buddy's laying under their pipe, they're rolled over under their truck, they're laying under their sled, their buddy's died in an outlet. That's when they get emotional. The time when they don't need to be emotional. So I've been more than vulnerable in a lot of my Facebook Live talking about stuff and saying this is my experience. And I've even had to explain to some people, like, listen, this is my vulnerability, not yours. But this is helping other people. You don't know what it means for me to share my story, what it does for other people to share the struggle that I've been through and what I've gone through. And it's not even nearly as bad as what some people have gone through, but it was bad. It was bad enough for me.
Yeah.
And on the faith side of things, I'll just touch on that. I always used to say, well, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. He's going to put you through the paces, but he doesn't give you anything you can't handle. So that kind of always rang in the back of my head. And one of the things that I to go back to the Christian side of things, one of the things that's these life lessons you learn. And I know a lot of people aren't on the church part of it or the Christian part of it, but the commandments, they talk about thou shalt not commit adultery. And I'm going to touch on that one because that's something that we kind of came up is there's probably a reason why I said it, because you don't realize the guilt and the shame that you go through afterwards. It devastates people, and you carry this stuff, and it is such a burden on your body, and you just, on your mind, on your heart. It changes a man. It changes who you are, and it doesn't change you for the better. And if you can't forgive yourself, that's the worst part of it. You're unable to forgive yourself as a result of that until you come to a place where you're vulnerable enough to say, damn it, I screwed up. I'm not perfect. Please forgive me. I just want to move on. I just want to live my life. And I actually went to my ex and I said, listen, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. And one of the things I did when I got divorced was I mandated that we have a communications course. I said, if this part of our life didn't work, we got to make this work for our kids, because I got 2 teenage kids. And I said, I don't want to screw that part of it up, because they're like the aftermath. They're in the wake of our marriage, right? And to have the vulnerability to talk about that, most guys won't even talk about what their ownership in it was. It takes two. It takes 2 people, right? And you're the common denominator. So the vulnerability part is showing up and talking about it and owning it.
Yeah.
Like if you screw up, own it. And I've noticed when I've told guys, like I said, just do what's right in your heart. And if you do it long enough, the rest of your life will come back, and people will come back into your life, and they'll respect you and they'll honor you. But you got to honor yourself first. You got to be vulnerable enough to say, yeah, I screwed up. Yeah, I screwed up, and own it.
So that's the only way you're going to learn too. That's it.
100%.
You will keep making the same mistakes the rest of your life until you own what you do.
Yeah.
Love it.
So that's the vulnerability part of it anyway. That's a whole other show altogether.
Awesome. Well, guys, we've kind of bounced around a lot. Like, I've been trying my best to kind of follow through with our notes and stuff too, and I feel like we've captured, I think, a lot of it, if not most of it at this point. But I don't want to, miss an opportunity, because again, this is an episode that, it's not going to come around frequently, and so I want to make sure that we capture any things that are on your minds. And so, DJ, I guess, is there anything that you feel like we haven't covered that, you feel like you can contribute into this conversation that may help somebody? I guess maybe let me just throw this out at you. We'll come back to that. But as I'm saying that out loud, I'm thinking okay, DJ of today, let's call him Enlightened DJ, the one who's lived through all of this, right? If DJ were to go back and talk to his mid to early 20-year-old DJ, who was maybe working for Nitro Circus, stepping out, of his marriage, living the lies that were there, like what would be the like shake you by your collar or wake up conversation that you'd have with yourself today with that previous DJ? Like what would you want to make sure make sure that DJ heard? And I kind of say this with the idea that, maybe somebody who's watching this is in that point in their life. So
the biggest thing for me would be the truth, to tell the truth 100%, always. Don't divert from it ever. No one's coming to save you. Like, you are the only person that has control of your life. And so, with that being said, your life is going to be immensely easier the more honest you are. And that's like just the base principle of life is honesty. And something that also sticks with me a lot in the midst of all my BS, my stepdad actually had this conversation with me, and it was kind of in passing. We're at an event in his house, and we briefly spoke, and he was just like, and this was when I was in the middle of all my crap, and I was starting to climb out of it, and he said, DJ, you need to think about other people's emotions. And I was like, what? I didn't really think about it. And the next day I took off on a solo hike in the Wind Rivers by myself, something I'd never done before. And I thought a lot about what he said, and I was just like, I am wrecking my wife's life. I am wrecking my children's life because I care way too much about me right now. And it is important to care about yourself, but it's absolutely critical that you think about the people around you. When you think about how your wife serves you, and you think about what your kids are going to do later in life and the legacy you're going to leave behind. If you died today, right now, what would your obituary look like?
That hits home,
and
man.
What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to look like? And I knew that, when I die, I want to be surrounded by my family. I want to be in a place of love, and I want to be known as an honest man who worked his ass off and who provided value to people's lives. And that's important to me. I wish I would have known that a long time ago.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. That's great insights. And so, Travis, kind of the same thing for you as, looking back at, where you're at today and, the things you've learned and experienced in life, and looking back to, the guy in your early 20s or, whenever it was, maybe you were getting into your first marriage. What advice would you give yourself, or AKA, maybe somebody who's watching tonight?
Man, I tell you, what are your values and what are your goals? And honor yourself. Learn what honor is all about. Like, along with all my business books I read, out of all the books, I read some books about samurai history. You want to talk about honor? Like, that is reading about that kind of history talks about the honor is crazy. We could never reach that magnitude of honor, I don't think. They would put their life on it. Like, it was just so crazy what they would do. But that's everything revolved, what they ate, how they moved, how they slept, what they read, everything revolved around honor. And, growing up as a Christian, honor thyself.
Yeah.
Honor thy neighbor, honor thy wife, honor the children. Like, you have to really honor yourself. And as much as, I was heavily involved in church and youth group, but there was so much other stuff going on around me that was negative, that didn't sit right. And it just kind of erased it all. Like, one good and 10 negatives. Well, the one good is gone, right? And that's a huge part of it. You have to stack up the positives in your life, because if you don't, the negatives will run you into the ground. And it's your thought patterns. Figure out what your values and goals are. That's the biggest thing. And if you can do that in your early 20s, I think that will shift your life. That'll give you a path to go down. And some people have that in their families, some people don't. And read a book. If you're not understanding where that is, read a book or reach out to somebody and talk to them. Don't be afraid to go and talk to somebody. Yeah. And I see it's a real prominent thing in my community that I'm in right now, where people are like, can you do something with the young men in our community? And I've done it with hockey, and I've done it with other stuff that my son's involved in. And man, the pushback I got from the parents in hockey was just like, holy cow, you guys. It was so much, because hockey is very masculine, right? And it's actually, John and I, I've talked about this. It can be really toxic. right? So my boy's like, I'm out. My boy said he's out. I'm like, okay, I'll stick with you as long as you want. I got your back. My boy's like, I'm out, you know. And then all the other stuff picked up, and I'll just go kind of into the snowmobiling part of things, because that's literally how I got connected with John, was through Scott Spiro, and motivated me to start my show, and then started listening to John's stuff, and I would go, okay, how many friends do I have? Oh, we have 150 common friends. Let's friend that guy. And I started friending anybody that had 150 or more friends. I would invite them as a friend.
There you go.
And that's how I started getting to listen to people's shows and their experiences. And I'm like, man, this is cool. And John talks about avalanche safety so much. And I was like, after my buddy died in an avalanche, I said to my other buddies, I said, I'm going to take this course through Zach Tracks in Alberta here. And I said, I'm going. You guys need to come too. Otherwise, I'm not riding with you. Like, you got to come. You got to take the course, because if I'm going to take it, what if I'm down and you guys don't know? Then you. So how do I explain that to my family and friends that, you know? And I said, we got to do this. And so it became more than just a course. It became the meaning behind it, because I'm like, okay, I value my life. I value my best friend's life. I value his wife and his kids. Why would I not do this work? Why would I not do this training? And it just became a part of doing, like the part of how I was going to be, right? Yeah. We're really good at doing, but how are we being? And it's that whole nother thing, John, you talked about yoga and stuff, and who do you want to be? Like, and DJ talked about your legacy, and that's one of the things I talk about is, what do you want to leave behind? Well, if you don't put the work into yourself, you might not be here. You might not have anything to leave behind but a memory. And why would you want to do that, right?
Yeah.
So
great. No, thank you for sharing as well. So, I feel like we're getting close to wrapping this up. And so, DJ, any other final thoughts or topics or comments that you want to tackle before we call it a night?
I definitely encourage men to, reach out, find a mentor. For me, I hired a life coach, and it completely changed my whole life. It really did. Best money I've ever spent in my life. I'm still, to this day, in a coaching group, and probably always going to be, because I think that we need that. But
that's awesome.
Definitely makes the goal thing is huge too. A long time ago, Greg Godfrey, who was the founder of Nitro Circus, he was the first guy in my whole life to ever say, "Hey man, what are your goals?" And he made me write them down and bring him a list in a meeting one day.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Greg and I, and this is back in 2005, Greg and I had lunch about 6 months ago, catching up. And I was like, "Hey, Greg, remember that list of goals?" I'm like, "I think I've knocked all of them off the list." And
that's awesome.
Oh, it's cool. So
that's awesome. No, that's awesome. And no, I just appreciate it. And before we're done, I'll come back to you one more time. But Travis, any other thoughts or topics that you want to tackle before we start to wrap this up?
Yeah, 100% on that. That's I honestly don't ever see me not having this be a part of my life, and I keep getting continuously asked now to speak at different events and talk about the things like that. And that's why I started a men's group called Ignite Your Life Brotherhood, so guys can actually come and be a part of the group. And John, you've even came in on some of the meetings, and with technology, you can do that from anywhere now. Yeah. You get to hear experiences, and people get to hear not just your experience, because what I might say might not resonate, but what you say, John, or what you say, DJ, might actually resonate and make a difference in someone's life. You just never know what words you're going to say.
Yeah, that was a really powerful moment for me. Like, I'd only ever attended one of yours, but you had posted it publicly on Facebook that, hey, if anybody wants to come sit in and join these men's group, here's the link. It's a private link or whatever, right? And so I registered for it. I sat in on it, and I don't even know if I knew exactly what to expect when I was joining it. I thought, oh, this will be kind of cool. Let's see what this is about, right? And like, immediately I was like, oh my gosh, there is some really deep stuff going on in here. And just hearing in that very private, open way that people are allowed to kind of just feel comfortable sharing whatever it is going on in their life and their mind. And to your point, Travis, is it isn't always all about you, the coach, giving advice, right? It's about sometimes that opportunity for people to help each other, right? Like maybe somebody in that group has experienced something that this other person is about to go through and can kind of give some references back and forth, and Travis can help guide that conversation. And so, there's a lot of great, whether DJ, you found a men's group, and the part I want to kind of call out is that, prior to today, literally 20 minutes before this show, DJ and Travis had never met each other, virtually or otherwise. They maybe even were not even Facebook friends. I don't even know if you guys were, knew each other on Facebook even or not, but
just recently.
Yeah. And so DJ saying what he said is not, predetermined, intentionally trying to promote what Travis is doing. DJ is just from the genuine bottom of his heart saying, get help, get a coach, get a mentor in your life. Turns out Travis up in Canada where he's at is doing that exact kind of work. And so whether you partner and work with Travis or find somebody in your community, but again, I love both you guys, right? Like it's, I consider you both very good, close friends at this point. We've talked to each other on the phone on and off both times. And I got mad respect for both of you. And now even more so tonight after coming on and having this really important dialogue. And so, anything I can do for either of you guys ever, just say the word and you got me, I'm here for you.
Well, it's important, I think, for people to hear, for guys to promote each other, for guys to support each other.
Yeah.
And to hear that, what DJ and I have gone through, and even what you've gone through, John, in your situation with your sister, you can come back from that adversity. You don't have to stay stuck.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to tear you down. You can like the phoenix, rise out of the ashes and, rebirth yourself, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'll tell you guys, like what you just said, like the more you help others, right? It's like, it's kind of become just that foundation of my life too. It's like, this give mindset of, live large and everything that goes along with it. It's the idea of like, for a brief moment, I'll just share with you guys since we all are tied to Scott Sparrow, but, for a brief moment, there probably was for me and probably for Scott both this idea of like, are we competing? Like Scott's got the same audience as I do. Like, should I be promoting him and sharing him? Should he be sharing me? What I found is that the more you just promote and share other people and get people like, I want to promote what Travis is doing. I want to promote what DJ is doing. Guess what? Just by doing that, people then will come back and gravitate to what I'm doing because they know that people don't care about you until they know how much you care, right? And whether it be me caring about you, DJ, and Tracked Out Adventures, like I've shared your posts about your business and what you're doing, and anytime I can send somebody your way, I do it 100%, right? And and I got your back, right? And at the same time, when I called you this week and I says, hey, I got an awesome opportunity, I think based on what you've shared and talked about publicly, I'd love to invite you to this. You got my back. You showed up tonight in a big way, and I really appreciate that. And Travis, same thing. It's like, your work and your content that you have up there, like it just kills me when I see you do a really meaningful video and it just feels like maybe people are just watching it without engaging, but like I look at how many likes it has or how many views it has or whatever, and I'm like, man, this information is way too important to just sit there with like 30 views, right? I share it out. I try to get it out there. It gets a few more views, but like I just really hope tonight, if nothing else, that follow both of these guys on Facebook. They both got amazing things going on personally and professionally. They're people I look up to that I respect crazy amounts, and we'll do anything for these guys. And if you guys can give them some love and support, I'd love to see that as well too. And so, Travis, how can someone I want to say help you or support you, but I know that your goal is ultimately just to help each other, right? Like your goal of your business is not just to help you, obviously, it's to help these men get through these things in their lives. And so how can other people help you help other people? Maybe that's the way I should word it. So,
well, sharing the word is a big thing. Like Michelle and I just were on a podcast a couple hours earlier with a bunch of women that were previously represented women in the UN. And it's a 16-day thing talking about domestic abuse against women.
Yeah.
So we were actually invited to talk on the platform. So just sharing the message that we're putting out there is the biggest thing, right? And social media is a huge part of that. Our community is not as small as you think. I grew up with Carl Kuster in my hometown where I went to high school, Carl Kuster Mountain Park. I have friends that go down to the States. They start in BC and they head down and they'll go to Washington. They'll go to all these different places to go snowmobiling. And if I start talking about Utah or start talking about Washington, well, I'm going to connect him with you and I'm going to connect him with DJ, say, go to Utah, do Tracked Out. He'll take you to places. And there's guys that are passionate about that. So it's amazing how that builds, right? Yeah. So sharing if a guy wants to come to the meeting, come to the meeting. We do it virtually right now anyway. It takes nothing to come onto a virtual meeting. And otherwise sharing the messages. There's lots of videos. I'm doing more and more, putting out videos, talking about things. Getting more involved in even things social media like TikTok videos, and there's lots of. It's amazing how much personal health stuff there is on TikTok. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But a lot of the social media gurus talk about that, and people are so vulnerable on social media. It's crazy. It's such an easy thing to do. It really is, because all you're doing is looking at the camera, right? And what a wonderful thing it is, like, to be able to talk about it and share it. Yeah. So that's, the likes and the shares, right? Hit like, hit share. And that's the way that's all I can say. That's what I know about social media anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, any final words from you guys like this tonight, as you guys are the subject matter experts here, and like, I don't want to miss opportunity. any advice you guys have for me in the show and things we do to continue to make this thing, bigger and better as we keep going?
We love what you do. I mean, I do,
Yeah, 100%.
And thank you so much I've been on your show a couple times now, and I really appreciate, you reaching out and supporting what I do. And, we're happy to support what you do too.
100%.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
I continuously promote and talk about your show. Like, it's, we're not, I wouldn't say I'm heavy into the snowmobile. We're not even supposed to go to the mountains right now to snowmobile. Those towns don't even really want you there. So
yeah,
it's so we just do local stuff, and if we get a little more snow, I'll be able to post some videos. But it's sharing what you're doing is awesome. I 100% support yourself and how you're bringing people together and educating people about the awareness around snowmobiles and avalanche. Because I'll tell you right now, from where we come from, my community every year loses people to avalanche. Yeah. And they always say, "Oh, he died doing what he loves." No, there's more to it than that, man. There's so much more to it.
There is a lot to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I love that you promote that, and I 100% support it. And I can't say enough good things about you. So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I sit and tell everybody I do this for free. But you know what? The most valuable thing that I get out of this, it's really, I don't feel like I'm working for free, because it's more valuable than money. It's honestly these kind of relationships and the network that we've built. I think back to the last 2.5, getting close to 3 years of my life since I've started this show. And, very clearly I am in a different place in my life today than I was 3 years ago before I started this show. And, for me to be able to go to a snow show like the Salt Lake show, and DJ, I think you and I had near misses several times. Like, I
saw you.
Did you see me? Dude, you didn't go. I was looking for you. Like, Edith and I were walking around going like, geez, I thought I'd seen DJ and Jessica around maybe. Like, and it's like, and then later I heard like, oh yeah, DJ was there. I'm like, gosh darn it, I missed him.
Yeah,
but anyway.
And then I had to go do a tour. So.
Yeah. But, what I would say is, like, to be able to go to somewhere like the snow show and to be able to just immediately have an entire building full of friends instead of strangers, right. That's what this show has become for me. And it's just an amazing experience. And I just that's where I keep pouring my heart and soul into all of this too, is because like I continue to get so much love and support back from guys just like you and all the folks in the audience and stuff too. And to me, that's far more valuable than, any other thing I could get out of it is those relationships and what it means to all the people that watch every week. So, all right, guys, like final words. I keep saying that, but like DJ, final words. That's it. Last words. Final words. What do you got?
This conversation we just had reminds me of a circle of influence. And my circle of influence is pretty small. It's guys that I want to be like. John, you're definitely in my circle of influence, but I encourage you guys to pick your friends wisely. Not everybody's your buddy. Really seek out men who will hold you accountable.
Amen.
Yep. That's it.
I love it. I love it. Travis, final words.
Final words. The choosing your friends things. Show me who your 5 friends are that you hang out with the most, and I'll show you where your future is going to be. All I can say is, guys, journal, have conversations with people, and don't be shy. Be vulnerable, be purposeful, be intentional. Think about what you want to leave behind and write that stuff down.
All right. And my final words are thank you both for what you've done tonight. It's amazing. I hope this episode blows up. Like I told myself before I go into this, you know what? I don't care if this episode gets 100 views. It's too important not to do it. Like it's amazing. And I'm sure when we hang up, there'll be far more than that. But, I just will leave it the way I leave every episode, which is God bless all of you and live large. Have a great night.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
See you.